everything you're about to see is completely original. It's all mine. The videos, the interviewing process, the music. So without further ado, let's get started, and I hope you guys enjoy.
Hello, my name is Phenex Schwarz-Ward and welcome to my VA Capstone Recital. Today, we will not only be immersed in music, but also engage with my thesis research, which ties everything together. As a young jazz musician, I've had the privilege of learning from the masters while also witnessing how the genre is evolving. Jazz has undergone dramatic changes over the years, from its origins in the early 20th century to the present day. With new generations of musicians constantly pushing the boundaries of sound, rhythm, and form, the question arises, what is jazz today? Historically, jazz was defined by elements such as swing rhythms, improvisation, and blues inflection. However, as modern musicians experiment with electronic effects, cross-genre fusion, and unconventional time signatures, the boundaries of the genre have become increasingly fluid. Through interviews with 5 contemporary jazz musicians and an analysis of their responses, I attempt to answer a key question. How can we define jazz today, and what role do rhythm, timbre, emotional expression, and historical context play in shaping its contemporary identity? To dive deeper into this, I've combined qualitative research with creative musical components. In addition to these interviews, I've composed an entirely original jazz suite inspired by the insights I gained from each interview. Each movement incorporates specific rhythms, timbres, and emotional qualities they mentioned, blending elements of the jazz tradition with more contemporary and experimental ideas. The instrumentation also mixes traditional acoustic instruments with electronic effects, highlighting the fusion of old and new. By combining both research and creative work, this project offers a nuanced experiential understanding of what jazz means today. So transcend time with me through this jazz odyssey and enjoy. Thank you. Pertaining to rhythm, you are a very avid player as well as composer, so how would you say that you use rhythm to express that essence of jazz today through your playing, but also your compositions?
That's a deeper question than you might imagine.
Yeah.
But if we don't have the rhythm, well, first of all, years and years and years ago, before people actually thought about what kind of jazz we were playing, or what people used to dance. So if the groove isn't there to invite the feet to move or the head to nod or whatever, then it wasn't really worth much to people.
Sure.
And the moment, I mean, I remember years ago when I was in high school, we played for dances. If the dance floor was empty, that means the band was kind of sad.
Right.
There was no groove. So, I mean, everything seems to pivot around how it feels.
Sure.
To dance, or to snap your fingers, or just to get your body moving, and that it was still, and then you heard this music, and all of a sudden it affected you. To me, that still has to happen. I don't care how many centuries. And the music isn't really that old compared to a lot of European classical music, for instance. But that has to be prevalent, and that's one of the issues that I have with some of the, quote, younger, newer, more contemporary, more hip, whatever that means.
Sure.
Sometimes that groove is missing, and so consequently, it's not memorable to me. they have a rhythm together, all of a sudden they become one. And then you can add as many people as you want, as long as everyone seems to somehow gravitate to this group. So I think that's one of the most important things for the longevity of the music. And it's also one of the criteria that I think a lot of people kind of base whether or not, because the word contemporary, what does that mean? You
Right.
know, right now, what's contemporary to you, I've already been there and gone some, and yet it's still there. So I try not to go there. It's just like you say, the musicians who are like yourself. How old are you right now?
I am almost 22.
22.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay. I don't think you're going to feel any different about the music when you're 72. The music that actually makes Phenex, the juices feel good, that you smile, or you get involved. And I think if we miss that, if that ingredient isn't there, the music doesn't last long with us.
Right.
No matter how technically involved it is, and it can be you're in awe from a technical sense, but for some reason it just won't hang with you.
Right.
So to me, the rhythm is very important. And to ask about for me, if I'm writing some music, it has to have something that actually helps hold it together. Even if it's a slow ballad, it has to have some rhythm, some forward motion that actually invites the listener to come in.
obviously you just wrote a ton of music that had a bunch of like electronic elements in it, that I had the honor of playing on you with. And so I think that one interesting part of that is like when you're talking about technology, like the integration of technology and like drum machines and sampling, even though that stuff has been used for quite a while in the genre, do you think that, what is the limit with that on it still being authentically jazz to you? Or do you think it represents a new direction entirely whenever artists are using or deciding to use technology like that?
So you're saying when like if artists use sampling and technology and drum machines and like synthesizers in jazz, what makes it jazz?
Yeah, like what exactly is the limit with that? Because I think we are kind of seeing like you could even say like, I mean, you know, starting with like Miles Davis kind of getting into like the psychedelic rock influence of things, and then you see like the usage of pedals and like different synthesizers. But I mean, technology is only getting more advanced, so I guess what I'm asking is like, what is the limit to that? Does jazz keep following those advancements, or is there a certain point where technology is kind of leaving jazz behind?
I think it's both. I think jazz will constantly keep integrating the new technologies in it, or not, because you always see trends. Like whenever society gets on the forefront of technology and uses a lot of technology, you also see trends of going back to the basics and like not use technology. So I think there will always be both happen, and it's up to the artists to choose how they want to be honest and authentic to their expression and what methods they want to express with. So
Okay, yeah.
when it comes to technology, the technology that was present in the 80s had a different sound than the technology present in the 90s, different sound than the one in the early 2010s and into the 2020s. So each era has a new development in music technology and its instruments, and this naturally brings a new sound to jazz, especially with like the new softwares, the new virtual instruments, the new sound modulation plugins that are creating very like rich and new sounds that seem to be out of this earth, like out of this world. So I think it just depends on the sound of technology in that specific area. This sound of technology will be present in the music it's being played in. But when jazz musicians use this technology, what makes it jazz? Because you see other artists use it, like other genres use it, like in terms of rock or indie music. But what makes this specific jazz is the elements of the jazz tradition, which is the harmonies of jazz, the rhythmic aspects of jazz, the improvisational aspects of jazz, and the comping and the interaction with the musicians. Those elements are what keep the jazz sound, even though it's using new technologies.
So when you are, let's say like you are singing a melody or maybe even just soloing, like, are you thinking to yourself like, I need to stay within a particular like traditional rhythmical vein, or maybe you're being influenced by something you're listening to, or are you thinking of that whenever you're singing?
No, honestly, I think this is gonna tie into like the emotional aspect of like when we go in to talk about like giving your emotion, is that like I'm really just feeling the melody and the words as this emotive expression, and that's why I want to hold on to a note a lot longer than I probably should be, or than what's written on the page, just because I'm really emphasizing this one note that to me makes me feel a certain way about it within the song, if that makes sense.
So what ways do you believe jazz serves as a medium for emotional storytelling in the 21st century?
I think that jazz itself is already just inherently emotive, instrumental or with lyrics. It's just always been about self-expression. It's always been about taking something that's written down on a page and making it your own. So it feels like that's continuing. And then, like I was saying before, maybe in sonic ways that some people can appreciate, which I totally understand. But the essence is there. People are taking a song and they're making it their own. They're not following this strict formula of rhythm and timbre. And I think when you bring your own authentic self, you are therefore emoting. And when people sense that you're truly emoting, then they can connect better and let themselves emote with you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you yourself, at least how you come to the music and how you feel about music, if you had to name one or two emotional qualities that come to you when describing the genre, what would those be for you?
In jazz, I mean, I just keep going back to self-expression. Like I keep thinking about how when I'm singing jazz, if I've had a really shitty day, I might be singing a song about, most songs are about love, right? In the jazz genre. It's, you've been scorned, or you're missing somebody, or you're just so in love and you have to tell everybody about it. What I love about jazz is even though I might not be specifically connecting to those exact lyrics at the time that I'm singing it, the ability to make the melody and the rhythm of that melody my own allows me to tap into the emotion that I'm feeling, fully express that. So I don't want to pinpoint like one specific emotion that I feel, but it's just self-expression itself. Like the ability that jazz has to let you let go and feel what you're performing, what you're playing, is the entire point. It makes me go back to like the point of performing music at all. To me, it starts with expression, but the bigger point is connection. You're connecting with someone else who's listening to you, and you're helping them feel. So whatever that specific emotion is doesn't matter. It's just that you are expressing it all and letting someone else like receive and express that.
So, for you personally, do you consider jazz more as like a rigidly defined style or more of an approach or both?
Yeah, well, I think when you get into particular eras of jazz, if you talk about jazz, like, okay, bebop,
Yeah.
you could take bebop and say, okay, here's what bebop is at the core of bebop, the 2-5-1s and there's certain types of scales, and you can talk about the theory behind this type of jazz. With swing, you can talk about the feel, and so each era of jazz, it has a certain stylistic component, to it. It has a stylistic kind of concept. that makes it swing jazz or big band jazz, or you can get into that and you can kind of break it down and study it and understand what makes it that kind of jazz. But jazz, the word jazz as a descriptor for the music has always been kind of bigger than any one era of jazz. And I think really, kind of just to reinforce what I've been saying, what makes it jazz is, does it allow for some level of spontaneous or organic self-expression?
I think it'll just continue. The way I see it is that it's kind of like an all-encompassing umbrella for like improvised music at the moment.
Yeah.
So there's like so many, and fusion is a big part of it. Like it can be so close to rock, but it's still more jazz if you're improvising more. I don't know. I guess it's like wherever you draw the line.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think you know, it's not out of the range of possibility if we kind of see it becoming more politically charged here soon, you know.
I know I would love to be able to do something with jazz. And I see people doing fundraisers with concerts. That's like the closest thing I can see that's like political activism, I guess, that like actually directly impacts something.
Right.
I don't know. Or I guess sometimes you could show up to a protest and play angry jazz, but I don't know. I think the fundraisers thing has been cool, and that is still activism. But yeah, I would love to be able to do something aside from just like sitting here, like, oh, I've done everything I can do. Like, anyway, politically, yeah.
What jazz is what happens right then.
Yeah, I like that.
And I think right now, when our modern social media and ways of marketing for music, I think musicians will find new names for their sound, and this is what creates genres. And then you can always define, oh, those sounds and elements are what make this genre, and those sounds and elements are what make this other genre. So it's important to have certain definitions for genres, but it's also important to have the concept of openness and never being rigid, and they both feed on one another.
What is your definition of jazz?
Utter self-expression.
Yeah.
Period. The end. Being your authentic self. That is what jazz is, and is the vehicle for and connection.
Yeah.
It's,
Totally.
I want to be able to express myself on an instrument. I want to know how to play in whatever key I want. I just want the instrument to be an extension of me as a creative person and as an artist. And jazz is just kind of a framework that allows you to make art through sound.
I think jazz is more of like a social movement than a genre.
Yeah.
Because there's so many genres within jazz at this point. Like and you played a bunch of different ones on each gig. So I don't feel like it's messed with like the jazz genre, but maybe it's allowed jazz to influence more like a larger audience because of the diversity. I don't know, it's different using electronics when you're playing. It like touches people, different people.
Through extensive research, interviews, and composition, my project has revealed that contemporary jazz is a genre defined more by its spirit of experimentation and creative freedom than by adherence to specific stylistic elements. While rhythm and improvisation remain core components, modern musicians are increasingly emphasizing openness to blending genres, incorporating new technologies, and reinterpreting traditional sounds. This study suggests that while the historical legacy of jazz continues to influence modern practitioners, the genre is becoming more of a concept or approach rather than a rigidly defined style. I've taken these insights along with the comments, opinions, and ideas I've gathered and combined them into my fourth and final movement, Cosmic Voyage.
typically the only woman. So just any woman who feels lonely out there, you are heard, you are strong, and you have a space for your voice. So make it. And thank you guys very much for being here.
Bye.